Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Welcome to our speaker series hosted by the Lake Sumter State College Bachelor of Applied Science and Leadership program. We're so grateful that you chose to be with us tonight. Your support of our program and the college is deeply appreciated. I'm Dr. Nancy Cummings, the program director for the Bachelor of Applied Science and Leadership. Our program educates and prepares people to successfully lead organizations and teams. It focuses on empowering students to reach their fullest potential as leaders. Students gain real-world experience so they can either enter or re-enter the workforce and positively impact their communities. Many of our students choose our BASL and leadership program to advance in their careers and take their best next steps. The goal of our Leadership Speaker Series is to share insights and wisdom from community leaders with our students and alumni. We're striving to showcase what it means to be a leader who is out there doing it really well and doing it every single day. So we thank you for being here. Through stories and shared experiences of our panelists, our students gain real-life perspectives that they can immediately apply into their own educational and professional journeys. So here's how tonight's going to unfold. I will introduce our moderator and our panelists. Then Deb will moderate the Q&A. We'll intentionally leave some time at the end for your questions. And without further ado, I'm going to go into our introductions. Tonight's topic is Beyond the Pitch, What Entrepreneurs Really Need to Succeed Today. Deb Snellen is our speaker series moderator. Deb is a speaker, facilitator, and instructor in our BASL program. For the past 12 years, Deb has served in higher education leadership roles as a passionate strategist for all things related to talent management and organizational excellence. Deb is also an accomplished author, and I love to share this. A fun fact to know about Deb: her first book was recently published and is on the shelves. It's titled Scalable Talent Management: Proven People Strategies for Excellence in Organizations of Any Size. And take my word for it, you're going to want to get a copy and read it real soon. And I'm waiting for you to quiz me because I've read it. I mean, don't do it now. Next is Amy Becker. Amy is an entrepreneur, educator, and retail business owner whose career blends servant leadership with practical entrepreneurship. After teaching children with special needs for nearly a decade, Amy and her husband, Fred Price, purchased a small comfort shoe store in historic downtown Mount Dora and transformed it into Becker's Best Shoes. It's my favorite shoe store. It is a nationally recognized specialty footwear retailer known for exceptional service and community impact. Under Amy's leadership, the business expanded rapidly, increased its footprint, and built a loyal regional following. Becker's Best Shoes has earned multiple Gold Customer Service Awards from national trade publication Footwear Insight, along with the recent Best of Florida distinction, a recognition that reflects Amy's unwavering focus on customer experience and operational excellence. Today, Amy continues to apply her entrepreneurial vision as owner of Becker's Best Shoes and sole owner of Body Street Mount Dora, an innovative EMS fitness studio focused on health, performance, and personal transformation. Through both ventures, she champions entrepreneurship rooted in purpose, resilience, and service, demonstrating that sustainable growth happens when businesses are built around people first. Ramona Crabtree Faulkner, I've known you for a while and I apologize for mispronouncing your name. Ramona is a speaker, corporate mindfulness presenter and coach, and the founder of Authentic Life Journey. She helps professional women and organizations shift from overwhelm and constant doing into greater clarity, focus, and authentic living. Through mindfulness-based practices and intentional self-awareness, Ramona guides individuals and teams to strengthen resilience and lead with greater presence and purpose. She also creates intentional experiences for women that offer space to slow down, reconnect with themselves, and return to their lives feeling renewed and aligned. Marc Robertz-Schwartz is a multi-award winning media and marketing executive, entrepreneur, author, and speaker. He has helped dozens of best-in-class businesses and organizations build their brand through traditional and digital marketing strategies. Marc has been honored and recognized with 3 regional Emmy Awards, 19 Telly Awards, International Incubator Business of the Year in 2012, twice named to the Gator 100 for fastest growing companies owned by a University of Florida grad, Go Gators. And his agency, Red Apples Media, was named a best place to work right before he completed the sale of the agency in 24. Marc is also the author of The Red Apples Way, which was released by Indie Books International in January, and it's a candid, entertaining story of how 9 core values turned a company founded on fear and desperation into one of passion and purpose. Deb, with that, I'll hand it over to you. Literally.
Good evening. Good evening, panelists. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our students and to the community for being here as well. We are recording, so we say hello to anybody who's watching us from the comfort of their office or their home. So we have a set of questions. I think you've seen them in advance. I have a couple that are not sent in advance, so we'll save those for a little later. And this is very informal. So we want to hear from all 3 of you on all these questions, but just jump in whenever you want to. We won't have much structure other than that I'll ask the questions and you'll have all the answers. So the first one is, hopefully, first question is, what's one myth about entrepreneurship that you wish students would stop believing, and what is the opposing reality? You're jumping right in. Go ahead.
So, hustle is not the way. Oftentimes we think we have to work, go, go, go. My dad actually said to me when I started my own business, you just got to get on that bike and pedal really hard, girl. And so I did, to my own detriment. So what I would say is that you want to move through your business intuitively. It doesn't mean you don't work hard. We work hard. But if you are working every day, all day long, and not giving yourself time for rest, then where's your creativity coming from? Where is your ability to find that inspiration that's going to open up the space a little bit more? So I would invite you to never pick up the hustle hat.
Great advice. Yeah.
Want to go next?
Amy, Marc?
Me? You? Go ahead. Go forward.
Marc?
I would say when I first opened up my agency, one of the most common things people would say to me was, it must be so great to be your own boss. And I would quickly let them know that I had anywhere from 20 to 30 active clients at any given time, and those were my bosses. In previous jobs, I would typically have one boss, maybe a dotted line to somebody else. But I had 20 to 30 different personalities, different drives, different ambitions. Didn't matter whether they were a $5,000 a month client or a $50,000 a month client. They all thought they were the most important. They all wanted my cell phone. They all wanted access to me at any given time. And then I had staff on top of that. So I think the idea of thinking you're going to be your own boss is probably the first myth I would say. Get that out of your head. That's probably not going to happen.
And one thing I would say, especially because mine is retail, you wear a lot of hats if you go into starting your own business. In the beginning, you do most of it yourself. And a couple things I learned is whatever you make, put it back into the business. And if you give it all to yourself, it probably isn't going to make it. 97% of all small businesses fail in the first year. And that's usually one of the big reasons is they think, oh, I'm making all this money. I'm going to start paying myself all this money. And then all of a sudden, you run out of product and you just spend all the money. So, learning that you will do trash, you will run here and run there and do a lot of things you didn't think you would do, because I hear it a lot. Oh, well, you're the owner. This shouldn't be a problem. I'm like, I haven't had a day off in a few days. And they're like, well, but you're the owner. It was like, well, yeah, but I still want to, like you said, have a little time to let my brain relax. And so it's one of those things where you do need to take time building something, and then you also need to recognize that it doesn't matter what the different jobs you have, you'll probably do all of them.
So related to that, you mentioned taking out the trash and watching the money and all of that. Our program strives to teach a lot of different skills that will be needed in the leadership world, and many of our students want to be entrepreneurs. What skills matter most in handling the uncertainty or the risk as an entrepreneur? What skills should we really be paying attention to?
I mean, I have one. Resiliency. Have a resilient heart. Everything's not going to go well all the time. There's going to be times where it's going to feel hard, and that could last months. Yep. So you have to be able to walk with it and trust in the process of it. When we don't trust in the process and we're trying to mind it into being instead of flowing with it and honoring it, that's that action and rest. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot tonight, because I believe that when we don't give ourselves the rest, we don't give ourselves the pause, then we can't find our way out of what feels like a point of drowning. Maybe we're under the water and can't gasp for air. And usually that happens when something's not going the way we want it to. But here's the thing inside of that. Resiliency means, okay, I fell down, I skinned my knee a little bit, I'm gonna get up and I keep walking. And every time you get back up and walk forward and take another step, you're building that resilient heart.
Can I just follow up a little bit? Do you feel like resilience is something you went into a business owner, or is it something that you learned along the way?
You definitely have to learn it along the way. I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, and I had no idea what I was doing when I got into it. I was like, oh yeah, I can do this thing. And boy, I opened the doors to my storefront in November of 2006. I went on vacation for 10 days, and I came back, and the bottom fell out of our economy. And I was stuck with a 3-year lease. And I had to figure out how to be okay in the midst of that.
Yeah, I would say there's no giving. I mean, once you make the step, like you did this 3-year lease, you're in. It's not like you can say, oh, this is harder than I thought, I think I'll quit. It doesn't work that way. And also, I wouldn't say I would have jumped into being an entrepreneur from the beginning. I think so many jobs that I've done along the way, when I was in school, when I was in high school, when I was in college, all of those little skills I learned along the way has helped me be what I'm doing now. You know, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend someone to jump right in. Oh, you're going to own your own business. It's like, okay, well, what do you know about that? And there's a book that I'm actually happy I didn't read it till after I had jumped and opened a shoe store, because I think I might have scared myself right out of it. It's called The E-Myth, and that's where I learned how many businesses don't make it in the first year, and it starts explaining why that is. And so a lot of mine was faith. I really had done a lot of things in sales, and I knew and I believed in the product. I can't sell something I don't believe in. And I did teach for a long time, and there were some situations that came up in the industry where education was making some changes, and so I had to make a decision to either, I couldn't stay in for the reasons that in the change, and so I had to make a decision. And that was hard, because I really loved what I was doing. And then selling shoes is, to me, a lot like special needs kids, and I worked with special needs kids, is every foot is different. And so I took all the knowledge that I had over the years and through my lifetime. I mean, I went back to school at 40 and got my master's, so it's never too late. At 60, I just opened another business. So just know that your journey along the way is how you get where you're going. And sometimes we had a second store, and it was in DeLand. COVID came. Guess what? COVID killed that store. I didn't see it as a failure. We actually closed the store and expanded another one. So a lot of things is just you got to go with the punches, and you got to go with your gut. A lot of times people say I have a lot of chutzpah. You know, you have to be brave and not afraid. You know, when COVID happened, I didn't know if any of my employees were going to work. So all of a sudden I realized, well, I can't close. This is my livelihood. I might be the only one working for the next however many months. So, I mean, a lot of it is just, when you're in, you're in. You got to give it everything you got, because if you don't, who will? You know, so it's a lot of, like she said, it's it's a tenacity. There's so many words you could use that make you do what you do, and it's a lot of faith. It's a lot of, okay. I mean, we expanded one store in the middle of COVID, and I was like, okay, you know, I'm talking to God. I'm like, we're going to go big or go home. And if you don't want us to go big, it's going to fail, and then I'll have to find something else to do. So, I mean, it's just sometimes, it's just, my husband and I have this picture that is two older people jumping off of the end of a pier, you know. It's like, it's just a leap of faith.
In a good way.
In a good way, yeah. In a good way, just like, okay, we just jumped without really a safety net. We jumped, and we just worked hard, and he's kind of in the back row back there. And without him, I can't, all the stuff that happens behind the scenes is what he's doing, and I can't do it without him. And so it helps to have employees that support you. I mean, there's a lot of more questions. We'll probably get to that, and I know he's got some great knowledge down here at the end, so I'll leave it at that.
No failure, part of the journey. I love that. Yeah, Mark.
Specific to your question, I think the answer varies with the individual. And what I would recommend is the individual needs to recognize what their strengths are, but more importantly, what their weaknesses are. So painting with a very broad brush, creative people are not typically good business people. Analytical people don't typically have really good people skills. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, understand what your weaknesses are, enroll in the classes that are going to help you build up the areas that you know you're not strong in until you can hire people that can pick up that slack. I mean, I see it all the time. I had several people who would leave the agency, very, very creative people, wanted to go off on their own. And generally speaking, it didn't work out for them, more often than not, because it was the business side of things that kind of got in the way of them wanting to be creative. So I would say identify what your weaknesses are and go after those things while you're in school and build up the weaknesses. Specific to your point about resiliency, there's a Marxism, if I may lay it on you. Take pride, don't take it personal, which is a really, really hard thing when you're an entrepreneur because you believe that everything that you have built is personal. You know, this was my baby, this is my blood and my tears and my heart and my soul, and no, it's a business. You are who you are, and a lot of the adversity that you're going to run into very, very rarely is because of anything personal. And I think your ability to be able to separate yourself from those things is going to help your resiliency. It's going to help you realize that being an entrepreneur is a marathon. It is not a sprint.
Yeah, quite the journey, as you said. At what point did you realize that being an entrepreneur also meant being a leader, since we are a leadership program? What's the intersection of those two concepts? And did that change your approach, or do you even see it that way?
Specifically, what came to mind with that question, running a shoe store, you know, people will come in and say, you know, want a discount, can I talk to the owner? You know, like something's going to change if they talk to me rather than the staff. And so consistency is so important when you run your own business, no matter what it is. You don't keep changing the rules, because then what do you have staff for? Because then someone figures out, oh, well, if I just go talk to the owner, I'm going to get this deal. And so, and I don't want my staff to feel like they can negotiate on price. I mean, we have a price, this is what it is, and when we have a sale, we have a sale. And so this goes way back to even my great-grandfather. They believed, and they were one of the first retailers to ever price goods, because that's when there was a lot of bartering going on. And so they just believed if a kid came in or any age came in, this is what it is, so that you didn't have to try to figure it out. And so that consistency earns the respect of your staff, number one, and then it also, as your customers, you know, you need to have a rule, come up with the plan, and stay consistent with it.
Because your customers come to expect that as well.
Right,
the consistency.
Because you don't want to, you know, I mean, a funny, interesting story, years ago I lived in a house and this guy came to try to sell me windows. And so, you know, you're sitting there through this whole spiel, and then he starts giving you a price, and then it gets lower, and then it gets lower, and then all of a sudden he says, well, don't tell the neighbor down the street that I'm giving you this price. That really irritated me. And I said, I know that neighbor. And I don't care if you give them to me for free. I'm not buying them now, because you've just changed the atmosphere of what we're doing here, and I don't agree with the way you're selling. And so that was the end of that. But that's kind of my belief in how you treat people, how you expect to be treated. And so it just is it's your core. I mean, you're selling yourself most of the time, so you want it to be consistent, so.
I think that happened to you so that it affected how you run your business now.
Of course, yes, of
that
course.
story
Those are
stuck
those
with you.
rules that you kind of go, that makes a lot of sense to me. That should be how we present ourselves to the public.
Right, yeah. Well, thoughts, leadership, and entrepreneur. Who wants to jump in? Mark?
When I started my company, I was, a one-man band in a 10-by-10 office in the Leesburg Incubator in downtown. So I was the leader of my own self. But as the company grew, I started to understand, and in the introduction it was mentioned that I just put out a book, The Red Apple's Way, which is based on core values. And what I started to understand was that I knew what I wanted the company to be. And as a leader, I felt it was my responsibility to set the tone of what the company stood for. And eventually those core values weighed into the type of people we would hire, the type of clients we would take on, the type of vendors we would work with, the role that we would play in the community. So to me, it wasn't necessarily as much of doing somebody's annual report or hey, you're taking a few too many smoke breaks or whatever the case may be. To me, it was a matter of setting the tone for the organization and then making sure that that was used consistently for accountability, for differentiation and marketing ourselves within the marketplace. Why would you work with Red Apple's media as opposed to another entity in the area? And it was because of the core values and the brand that we were building around those values. To me, that's where the leadership really started to kind of take shape for me. And that was due in large part to some of the organizations I had a chance to work with leading up to that point in my career.
Thank you. Ramona?
I was in the same boat. I started out as a massage therapist. It was just me, myself, and my table, right? And I don't really think that understanding leadership came in until I started my second brand. So my first brand was encouraged to get started because my dad's like, you need to go and have a shingle. And I'm like, okay, sure, why not? And then I learned a lot over those 10 years. I also had a lot of lessons that that had physical and emotional tolls for me to work through. And in 2016, when I began to really get to know me and understand who I am as a human being, and I started moving into that self-leadership space, really focusing on who am I, what are my values, what is my integrity, and how do I want to show up? And then I started attracting the people that met that same value. And now where I'm at with my business is transforming again. And the attraction is still the same. It's how do we bring in that intentional movement forward, the same like hearts that see things in the same way that I do, so that we can create the container that is going to offer whoever is coming into that to receive the intentions that I have set for the company.
Thank you. I wrote down a note. If we have time, I have a follow-up question about that. What advice, we talked about failure a little bit, what advice would you have students who fear that failure if they become an entrepreneur?
Expect it.
Well, fear is sometimes a motivator. So, faith and fear kind of can't be in the same place. So, but it is scary sometimes. I mean, back in October, we had 19 inches of rain in 6 hours. And guess what? It washed out Donnelly Street, which is a mile from our store. And it got all over the media that Mount Dora's closed. Well, I mean, that was fear. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, people think the whole town is closed, and that's how we make a living. Mm-hmm. And so instead of just living in fear, I got in the car and drove over to the city and said, we need to get some media out that Donnelly and Mount Dora is open. So, I mean, instead of just getting, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We all gathered together as a community, and we all went out and started finding, I found clients and people that came to my store and shop that I had no idea they had media connections, and all of a sudden people just came out of the woodwork to say, we need to help. This is our little town. We need to help it. And so you need to take it. When you feel that fear, there's usually an action that needs to happen next. So you got to figure out, what is the action, or what am I fearing, and then what can I do to overcome that fear? It's scary to start your own business, but there's a reason you wanted to do it. And I always, when we have those rough times, or we're going through a hurricane and you're wondering how slow it's going to be for the next couple of weeks, I just remind myself, I know I was supposed to open this shoe store, or this my other business too, Body Street. And so I just need to take action and do what I think is necessary to keep going and, prepare, things like that. It's just action, fear. Don't quit, though. No quitting.
And when I said expect it, I meant expect that you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Expect that things are going to happen that are out of your control. Fear in my work is the opportunity to go, okay, let's dig into what's going on and what I need, and get some journaling going. That's that self-leadership. That's the digging into myself and making sure that I'm doing the work that I'm sharing with others. And then what that does is that I really loved this phrase that I came into many years ago, and when things don't go my way, failure. What's the gift of this situation? What did I learn here? What did I gain that if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be able to do the thing that's coming next, right? So failure is falling forward, right? We're moving into the next thing. The only way that failure wins is if you don't get back up.
One of my favorite quotes is from Stephen Bochco. He was the executive producer of many, many things, but Hill Street Blues was probably what he was best known for. And I read a quote from him that said, "Failure is not an option, it's just a nagging possibility that keeps me focused." So the possibility that it's always out there, and of course we want to avoid failure if we possibly can. I will build upon what you just said, because I think very often when we take a step back, we find that what we thought was failure might have been a blessing. All right, and so one of the core values of the Red Apples Way is respect the universe, which is just another way of saying that things that we perceive as being a failure or a setback very often manifest as, maybe this didn't go the way it was supposed to for a reason. I learned something from it. Chances are I'm going to be better off because of it. Clients that we really thought we wanted to land and didn't work out, later realized they probably would have sucked the life out of the organization had we landed them, no matter how valuable they might have been from a cash flow standpoint. So I think that's an important thing to remember, is perspective. Lick your wounds for a couple of minutes, move on to the next thing.
Things happen for a reason. Learn from it.
Absolutely.
The next question is about resources and support. What resources or support systems made the biggest difference in your journey? And how can students tap into those as students in our program?
Learn to network immediately. I organically networked most of my career. I didn't put much value in the concept of joining groups and meeting people, because it wasn't something that I had learned. Over the past year and a half, I have entered a whole new world. So that is the key that I want to hand to your students, is put yourself out there into these networking organizations now. Get to know people that are in the industry, that are in your community, that can support your ideas and inspiration, that can talk to you about their own experiences with whatever it is that you feel inspired to do. Because what that's going to do is, first of all, it's going to give you resources. And second of all, it's going to give you the opportunity to maybe learn some things that you don't have to go through the hard way. So networking is, I think, for me, the tool that I would like to, if I had been given that 25 years ago, maybe I would have had a different experience along the way.
That's helped us a lot too. We joined the chamber in downtown Mount Dora immediately when we opened. And so you meet a lot of people. And then even going back, when I went back to school to get my master's at 40, I wanted to be a teacher, but I wasn't necessarily sure what age group, or so I signed up to be a substitute teacher while I was going to school. And so it helped me get out there in the different schools and see where would I like to work, where would I like to, what age group, I wasn't really sure, and it ended up being that I really loved elementary age group. And then I ended up being a special needs hospital homebound teacher, which I had no idea, that came out of left field, that was gonna be my specialty. And it turned out I was really good at it, but I had no idea that that's where it was going. So find the field that you're interested in. I mean, I went with little cards to schools that I really wanted to substitute at, but they were full and they had their favorites, so they never would call you. And I went around with little cards and introduced myself. And then the school I really wanted to work in, somebody called out on Christmas Eve, or, like right before Christmas break. And I was like, oh yeah, I can be there in 20 minutes, So, and then they got to know me, then they started calling me. So if you are interested in a field, I definitely say network in those fields, go to those places, volunteer, find someone who you can mentor, And I had a mentor that helped me with PE. I met someone and they helped me in the beginning of what I was doing. And so even if it's not in the field you want to go in, I would also recommend you need to be out there. You need to have some job experience. You need to work those tough jobs and those interesting hours, and then get that experience, because it's really hard to start from nothing, not having any experience. So those are just some of my words of wisdom.
Thank you. Mark?
We were an incubator business, so we were one of the original, it was Leesburg, the city of Leesburg, Lake County, and UCF at the time, and it was down in downtown Leesburg. And a fabulous class, if you will. It was myself, Dennis McGee, who owns the Mr. Handyman franchise, and Mark Starcher, who owns Evergreen Construction. And whether it was the incubator that we can attribute our success to or not, I will tell you, if absolutely nothing else, it was like being in a dorm. We came back from calls and we would celebrate our successes or commiserate over our failures with each other at the time. So that was a fabulous resource to have. I will also tell you that I made very early mistakes on both the legal side and financial side. And it was because I was trying to save money, and it actually wound up costing me more money by not finding a good attorney, a good bookkeeper or accountant. We were a marketing agency, so we knew how to do that part of it. But having some good marketing people to support you, I think, is also, I think it's unfortunately seen as an expense that can be ignored initially until the money starts rolling in. I'm going to put up a Facebook page, and I don't think it works that way. So I think that there's some very important resources that, as part of your business plan, make sure that you have budgeted and accounted for.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you. You mentioned incubator. The next question has to do with the startup ecosystem that's pretty strong in Central Florida. What opportunities do you think students should be paying attention to right now? What opportunities do you see that are out there?
That was the one question on there that I wasn't really sure how to answer that question, because when I started, there wasn't a place to go to get funding, when you're younger, or we had just moved, so we didn't own anything at that moment. I mean, there was a lot of things that would have been like every door closed, so I'm glad to know that that's out there. I actually looked it up to see what it was, and if there's those careers or those things that people are interested in, take that question and look it up and chat GPT it, because that's what I did. And then if it's an area that you're interested in, I certainly would suggest to them to pursue what is from that question, because I didn't know anything about it personally. So that's all I could say for that particular one. Yeah.
The SBDC offers free resources and programs. In fact, I think I just saw something come through my email the other day that they're doing something for maybe something with accounting. I can't remember exactly. But these are free classes that you can go to. You can actually sit down with someone at the SBDC and they'll talk with you about your vision. I think they may even have mentors. So, that's a great resource to lean into, especially if you are starting your own business, because they are going to help guide you.
Small Business Development Center, right? SBDC? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Well,
Mark?
certainly shout out to the Lake Sumter State College program here. I mean, if you're not tapping into this, I don't know what you're thinking. Which is my camera? I don't know what you're thinking. But this didn't exist, so, at least not in this magnitude. So I think those types of resources are part of how this area has evolved. My wife and I are here on year 22 of our 5-year plan here in Lake County. And so the evolution in those 22 years has been extraordinary. When you look at the diversity of industry and business compared to what it was, right? It was very much a construction-driven business, very much driven by the villages. And with that came all the other industry then to support the areas that continue to grow out into the other parts of the county. I would also say that I think LinkedIn is maybe a resource that is just right there at your fingertips. Because if you are a budding entrepreneur in retail, to be able to go onto LinkedIn and find somebody who's local, who you might take for a cup of coffee or a lunch or something like that to kind of pick their brains a little bit, it's incredibly rare that you'll find a fellow entrepreneur who knows what you're going through that will say no to you. You just have to make the ask.
Yeah.
Another resource that I've used in both Eustis and in Claremont is called 1 Million Cups. And so 1 Million Cups is essentially a mastermind. So you come in, you share, you have to be a new business or a pivoting business so new business within your first 5 years, or you're in a pivot. So because I was in a pivot, I was able to access that. And you step up in front of a room full of people, you share for 5 minutes the pain point that you have in your business, and you get a room full of feedback. And then 6 months later, you come back and you share what happened since you were with them. And I did that in July. Within, I believe, 6 weeks, I had launched my first product with my new brand, my Reclaim Women's Empowerment Brunch, which very grateful to our dear friend here for supporting me. And so when I went back in, I was able to share with them that I had 55 women in the room. And that was a big deal, because that was a proof of concept. So 55 women to come into the room for your first time, like that was a big swing, and it paid off.
To some people, networking is a scary thing. They think of walking into a room and having to talk, and that's not something they're comfortable with. But networking can just be calling you up and asking a question. So I'll put you on the spot. If any one of our students called you up and said, I'm a BASL student and I have a question, would you not answer the question? Would you hesitate at all?
Of course we would answer the question, or at least I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
I would.
Yes, of course. I would say probably text me, since we get so many spam calls these days.
Yeah.
Text me first,
Yeah.
so that I know who you are. But I would happily sit down or meet for coffee or just answer a question over the phone. But yeah, we want to help each other out, because there's a whole community that helped us out. I mean, we wouldn't still be here. When our customers say, and Nancy says, I love your shoe store, well, we wouldn't be there if it wasn't for people like Nancy coming in and buying shoes. I told the FedEx guy one day, I said, we need to work together here, because he had done something he shouldn't have done. And he goes, well, my job's permanent. I said, well, you kind of don't see the big picture, because if I didn't need packages, you wouldn't have something to deliver. And sad to say, within 2 weeks, he didn't have that job anymore. But, to realize how we get where we're going, because if no one was listening, in all of our jobs, if no one came, how would we make it? And so we have to work together and care about one another. And so it's a lot of that networking, and then remembering, why are we here? And someone said, if nothing's coming in, nothing's going out. So if people aren't buying shoes, then I don't have a way to pay my employees. And so we all need to see the big picture, just like the FedEx guy. If I'm not ordering, and of course I changed all of my accounts to UPS. So
Did you look at his shoes when he
what's that?
Did you look at his shoes when he came in? Just wondering.
Hey, we give those guys a discount if they come in, so.
I'd like to also just touch on the discomfort around networking. That was very uncomfortable for me. They put you on the spot. You got 30 seconds to give your pitch. This is who I am. This is what I do. That 30 seconds is not where you find the gold. It's the conversations that you have when you sit down one-to-one. And I alluded to Nancy because that's what happened is after that 1 million cups, I was introduced to her, we sat down, and I actually had to call the meeting because I was like, I got another meeting I have to go to because we had gotten into this flow and it felt so positive and good and encouraging. And that's where the gold is whenever those one-to-ones are uncomfortable until you hit the right one. And then you're like, okay, now I get it. And it's a lot easier because if you show up authentically and you know who you are and what it is that you're passionate about and what your purpose is, the person across the table from you is going to feel that. And if they're the right mind and heart to be with you, they're going to start feeding that energy with you.
And something to add to that too is you're not just there to sell you. You want to know about them too. I can think of things like this shirt. I found out about the company that makes this shirt because I was at a chamber breakfast. And then our dog almost died recently, and at that chamber breakfast, someone stood up and said, our vet now has emergency 24-hour care. And within a week, our dog almost died. And I think, it helps when you're networking. If you have a hard time talking about yourself, ask the people that are in the room about themselves. And then you may find out, oh, well, I could really use that. I need this, I need that. And then all of a sudden, it makes it easier for you to talk about what you do when you find out what they do. And then there's some connection sometimes, and then you realize, you look back and go, oh, wow, I'm so glad that person was there because I really needed that. And so it's not just about the fear of talking about yourself. It's a lot of that because, we actually just met and now we're going to do something together. So,
Hey,
yes. So.
how'd I miss out?
And I've said a lot of times.
I wear shoes.
Yes, you need shoes. So he can come to our media. You can come to that event because it sounds like an amazing event. So now we got all three of us working together.
And I just want to add one more thing about networking. Change the mindset from I'm networking to I'm building a relationship.
There's a little bit of a trick or a secret that I'll share. Let's say you're going to a chamber breakfast. Bring somebody with you. Think back to when you were single and you'd go to the bars. Your wingman or your wingwoman, right? Have you met Ramona? Let me tell you about Ramona. That is an excellent way to kind of get over your own challenges that you may have in being the person to initiate that conversation, is to have a wingman or a wingwoman with you to kind of help break that ice for you.
Or if you get stuck in that silent moment when nobody's talking to
Run.
you, you always have that person.
Yeah, run. Or pass out.
Listen, or just listen. You can just be standing with a group of people and listen, and because you're going to learn so much about people just by being present.
You've all touched on, one final question here, going off script, but you've all touched on values in how it drives your business, and you've even written about it most recently. But how do students go about finding out their core values? How do you only have about a minute to answer this because we need to open it up for questions and answers, but how do you discover your core values?
I think most people know right and wrong. I think you start there, and you start with kindness. And I think if you can start there, the rest will work.
Do unto others as you would have done to you is a pretty good motto to live by. I live with heart, I lead with heart, and that's really for me, like I want to show up authentically and make sure that there's always love that's guiding that process forward.
Right.
I think it's hard when you're young. When you're new into the workforce, or if you're new starting a business, whatever your avenue is going to be, I think you are still, number one, trying to find yourself. But I think you're also adapting to what you think your environment is and how you're going to be accepted in that environment. I think with age and experiences and hopefully some good mentors, you start to develop the comfort to understand that there is a certain DNA about you. That you then realize, I don't need to be compromising certain things. Like, I get maybe that I had to, look, my first job was in Bangor, Maine. Like, what on earth was I doing in Bangor, Maine? But it was my first job opportunity. So I got in the car and I moved to Bangor, Maine. So we make certain sacrifices. And I think, again, as we find ourselves, we find our voice, we find our comfort, we find our maturity, our values start to come through. We start to realize the things that challenge our values, sometimes the things that wake us up the most, are the things that make us the most uncomfortable. And we say, that's not the kind of company I want to work for. That's not the kind of person I want to work for. And if all else fails, purchase a copy of The Red Apple's Way. We'll guide you through the values.
On that note, we will open it up to your questions. Anybody in the audience have a question for our panel?
Oh,
Don't
come on,
be
there's
shy.
practicing.
They've shared a lot of good information with you. Anybody have a question? Thank you. We need to get you a mic.
Will each of you very briefly, maybe like 45 seconds to a minute, share the failure that formed you best?
I mean, I already touched on it. The bottom dropped out. And I will say that because I was on a vacation and I came back and everything literally, like within days, was falling apart, I had PTSD about taking vacation. And I had to learn to trust that it was okay to rest. Because when you work through that kind of a traumatic experience where you're a single mom, you're trying to put food on the table, and you have $10,000 a month you're responsible for that's outside of your household. It was something that I had to really work through. But I'm taking way bigger risks now. And it was because of that I'm willing to do it.
Okay, what came to mind? I've worked since I was 14, and years ago, I worked with my then husband in a business that we built, and I really helped it grow, and we ended up, it was hard to work together, and so in the end, I lost my job because it was really his business. And it was a difficult time at that time to figure out, what am I going to do now, because I was really good at this. But then I had a moment to think, what is something I've always wanted to do? And at that time, that's when I went back to school and got my master's in education, because I always thought I would be a good teacher. And so even though it was a failure, and it was very hard, it was a very difficult emotional time, it also gave me that time that I probably never would have had, because to go back to school, it takes a lot. All students that are in school, we know it's hard to work a job and go to school, but a lot of times you have to do that. And so this gave me that break to make a change and do something. And everything I learned during my master's in education changed my life, and how I treat people, how I listen to people, how I see people differently. And it was because of some of the classes I took when I was going back to school to get my master's.
I'm not sure I would call mine a failure. It was definitely a turning point. You and I have a very similar story. It's almost scary. I was working for the Villages. I went on vacation. I came back end of 2008. Perhaps that rings a little bit of a bell for you. Yeah. And my entire department got laid off. Yeah. And here I am, my wife had just taken a buyout package from her company, so she was starting up her business. And here's two people who both had dual incomes 6 months earlier, now have zero income. My failure was that I knew better. I was miserable at that job at that point in time. The universe was lacing up its boots to kick me in the butt and gave me every opportunity to do it on my own, and when it didn't, it said, well, here you go. And now here I am trying to figure out, what am I going to do to start generating some revenue and making a living? And that's why I kind of refer to myself as an accidental entrepreneur. I never set out to do it. I didn't have a choice. That's the fear and desperation part that started the company. But it was the most valuable wake-up call in the course of my career.
Thank you. You have a question? Do we need to get a mic to you?
I saw that hand go up.
Yeah, I saw your hand.
Thank you. I think that the question I had was eerily similar to hers. It was, what was the biggest stumbling block that you had to overcome? But another question would be, is there anything that you know now that you wish you knew before or earlier on when you were starting up that you would have liked to have known?
Everything. Everything.
I think the attitude of it always works out. Like, there's always a solution. There's a book called Everything is Figure Outable. And that message is like, okay, so even if it looks ugly, so go back to my packaging, like, what's the gift of the situation? Even the ugly packaging, there's some gold in there, there's some opportunity in there. So I think just trusting in the process.
I always wished if I could go back to high school, knowing what I know now, I would kick butt in high school. I'm telling you. I graduated with an honors and
Do you
all
want
that,
to
but
name
I had.
names? Any
What's that?
butts in particular?
What's that?
Any butts in particular you'd like to name?
I mean, just in general, because, when you're going through school and you don't have that self-confidence and you don't know where you're going to end up, and it's like inside you kind of know it's there, but you're too afraid. Don't be afraid, because we all have unique abilities, and you might not be like this person or this person, but you were created to do something special, and it's usually in there. And if I look back, I saw it way back then, but I didn't know. Didn't know that about myself. And I look back now and go, if I knew I was going to be now at this age doing what I'm doing and have gone through what I've gone through, high school would have been so much more fun, because it's a great time. In college, I enjoyed it. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it, but I wish I knew and had the confidence in myself then that I totally have now. And I always knew it was there, because I always thought differently than so many people around me. But I thought that was something wrong with me. So I know we all have it. It's like, well, I'm not like her, or I'm not like him. And I think, as we all know, we go through struggles, but I just know that and I can look back and know that I knew. So just know that you know, and then take that and run with it. And you'll get there a little quicker. Maybe you won't be at 60 opening another business. You might be doing it at 30, so.
Well, and we
Do
talked
that.
about this before we started here tonight, which is so my background in yoga, one of the philosophies that we talk about in the yoga philosophy is the tapestry that you are creating, right? So you don't understand that you're weaving your tapestry all along the way. I have a project right now that's about to happen that I was out walking 3 days ago, and all of a sudden I went, oh my gosh, every single thing I've done my entire life is in this project. Yes. And it just became very, very clear to me. Everything that I experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, the easy, the hard, it's all because it's leading me to now. So just trust in that process.
Trust in the journey. We have a question from a student, and I don't know. Michaela, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to ask it? Okay, I'll go ahead. I'm gonna ask it just as she posed it to me. Have you ever reached a moment
Should
in
this
your...
not be an exercise in networking? Like, we just talked about this. Come on, Michaela.
I just don't want to put her too much on the spot. So I do have her question. Have you ever reached a moment in your career where you felt stuck or unsure what move you should make next? And what steps did you
Never.
take?
May I intervene just for the sake of time, if we can keep it to about 45 seconds, and then we can
Quick
do our
answer.
wrap-up.
So only stuck for
yeah.
a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, stuck, and have to. That's that self leadership. That having a relationship with self. That was the answer to becoming unstuck. Was how do we take whatever it is that's going on and find what we need underneath that feeling of stuck or uncertain or I don't know where to go. It took a year. I sat in silence. But I got to where I am now because 2 years ago I took that time.
Running a business can be a grind. You're constantly going. You're constantly responsible for people and clients and employees and everything. And there were several times along that journey that I was just wiped and thought, I can't do this another year. And then something would happen, a new client, a new employee, you know, it's introducing the puppy to the older dog, and all of a sudden the older dog gets all this energy again. And so those little markers along that journey happen to me quite frequently. With the rest of my 45 seconds, I'm going to say real quickly that the one thing I missed on resources is to have a supportive family. My wife and daughter stood by me every step of the way, and they were on one heck of a roller coaster ride, and they were screaming the entire way. And so surround yourself with people who will support you. I think that's an important resource. I defer the rest of my 45 seconds.
And I would say stuck sometimes is just wait. There may be a reason you got stuck because the answer's not right there, and it is, you just be patient because it may not be supposed to happen right that second, so you need to wait till that clarity comes.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight and all the good knowledge that you shared with our students and the community. And I'll turn it back to Dr. Cummings.
Thank you, and thank you for the point. We're also grateful that you are here tonight. Before we move on and I do the wrap up, I would love to give each of you a token of our appreciation
thank
from
you.
the program.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you, Mark.
It's $1 million.
It is, it is. It came from 1 million cups. Right?
There's no shoes in there, though.
Yet. Yet. Remember, be patient.
That's right.
Wait. The shoes are not there yet. So in wrap up, I'm going to try to touch not the way that they did with the passion and the insight behind their words, but to give us a summary. Myths I want us to be mindful of and remember from learned experience. Hustle is not the way. Move through your business intuitively. Never pick up the hustle hat. And I know for some of us that are a little bit older, and I know with all of the work that a lot of us do, and most of us in here are also entrepreneurs as well, it's hard. It's hard, especially generationally, to not pick up the hustle hat because we were raised so different. So those of you who are younger, do not pick up the hustle hat. Be your own boss, and in doing so, you will do all the jobs as the owner. We heard that resounding. I'm going to touch on the 97% of businesses at the end because the SBDA and the SBDC do share stats on businesses at 1, 3, and 5 years, and I do want to close with that because that's eye-opening. So some skills to handle when you're an entrepreneur. First thing that was mentioned was resiliency, and have a resilient heart. Trust in the process, and please be mindful of action and rest. Learn the skills along the way that will lead you to it, and go with your gut. Be brave. When you're in it, do it. You need to have tenacity, and along with tenacity, you also want to lean into your faith. Recognize your strengths and your weaknesses and lean into both because they will guide you. Take pride. Don't take it personal. That was huge. How many of us have done something, and this is just a Nancy side note, how many of us have done something and it didn't go the way that we anticipated or wanted, and boy, did our big feelings get hurt. So as entrepreneurs, we can't let that happen. We have to be mindful. And then the other thing from the front part of the conversation, which each of you mentioned, and Deb, you brought up as well, is failure. And I think a note on that is failure is going to touch all of us differently, and we will all learn from it differently, but know that failure is not a bad thing. Being an entrepreneur is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Consistency is so important. Don't negotiate. Have a rule, follow it, and stick with your plan. It's your core, and these aren't written as intelligible sentences. They're my notes as I was taking them, so bear with me as I go through them live. It's your core. It's how you present yourself, and that will set the tone for your organization. Self-leadership values are what attract your people and how you run your business ultimately. Touching on failure now, and I have a big area on this. So failure, we know, we've all lived it. We need to expect failure in various forms. Fear and failure go hand in hand. When you feel fear, there is usually an action that needs to happen. What is the gift of this failure and of this situation? And be aware of that each time failure occurs. Failure is falling forward. The only way failure wins is if you don't get up. And so I think a message in that is regardless of how you fail, where you fail, get up. And then it won't be a failure. What we thought was a failure might wind up ultimately being a blessing. And this was kind of fun and very literal. Lick your wounds for a few minutes and move on. Learn to network immediately. And of all things, between, I think, two of the most important takeaways from tonight is understanding failure and the true gift and value in failure and networking. So we'll touch on networking a bit. Put yourself out there now, wherever you are in your moment, put yourself out there networking. And be aware of the resources and opportunities that come through the networking. Another thing, and I will say I know this firsthand with my own business that I've had for about 18 years. The one thing I knew from second one is that I would not do my own accounting, my law, or my bookkeeping. So the 3 outside consultants that speak into my business and have for decades now is an attorney, a bookkeeper, and an accountant. So be mindful of that. We're not good at everything. We can't be. We have to be real with that. And whatever area you think you need support in, be wise and get the support early. Resources that are out there, the SBDC opportunities, LinkedIn was also mentioned. Use that to network and collaborate. A lot of us are familiar with 1 Million Cups, the opportunity to pitch and also have the accountability. And Ramona is a living example, successful example of that. And also what Mark mentioned, and is so true in everything that we do, is being surrounded and having the support of loved ones. And that makes such a significant difference. This hit me hard. If nothing is coming in, nothing is going out. And that's financial, it's also all things, because we're filled and we're drained by so many different things. So thank you for saying that so boldly. Here are a few things on networking. Fear is legit, walk into it. And so regardless of what I might project right now, I remember my first networking moment, and I was shaking, my knees were trembling. So again, regardless of how you know me now, I do remember that very first chamber networking moment I went to years ago. I was so scared. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a Deb or an Amy or a Ramona or a Mark to lean into. Dr. Gehrig, you weren't there. And I was terrified. And I went in anyways. And I met people who are now profound contributors in my life and in my business and in what we do here at the college from that very first moment that Dr. Nancy Cummings was so scared and had her little knees trembling. So go in scared, do it anyways. We all were in that moment. So don't be afraid of that. Be aware that every time you're in there, it's not about networking, it's about building relationships. So if we know that we want to build relationships and we are wired for relationship, that's really what you're doing. You're going in and you're making connections and building relationships. It's not that scary thing called networking. I already mentioned it, but also bring someone. Find your wing person, and I love that. I wish you had told me that years ago. I'm grateful for everything along the way. Man, I was petrified. I'm an introvert and I'm a quiet person oftentimes, like I'm the one sitting over there in that corner, not even here in a chair. And so it can be scary. Take someone with you and be bold, be brave, and go in. We talked about core values. How do you find your core values? What was brought up is there is right and wrong. And most often it's obvious. It always isn't, though. Kindness, lead with kindness, and let kindness guide you. Do unto others. Lead with heart and lead with love. Something that was mentioned towards the end. I apologize, people are texting and it's getting in my way. Something that was mentioned towards the end is with age, experience, and mentors, you'll begin to understand your DNA, and your voice and your values will come through because of and with that. So you're not going to know it all now. And even if I'm 62, right? And I know we're not supposed to say that, but a lot of us are launching new seasons and new chapters in our lives, regardless of our age. And just know that you're going to learn constantly and be open to the learning. Mark, you mentioned running a business can be a grind. Flat out. It also can be such a blessing and a joy, so they kind of go hand in hand. Be patient and wait, and always just be steadfast in your journey and believe. So I do want to mention part of the data that comes out of the SBDA and the SBDC is that over 85% of small businesses will fail in the first year. At year 3 of those 15% that made it through the first year, 55% of those will fail. And at year 3 of the 55% of the 15% remaining from the first year, 35% of those in the 5th year will fail as well. And so know that you need to start with a plan, lean into the people that surround you, get to your chambers, get to the SBDA, get to the SBDC, join all of those organizations, find a mentor, lean into people that you trust and you love and you respect, and let them guide you. There's not one of us, and Deb owns a business as well, there's not one of us that knows everything and could have done what we're doing by ourselves. So realize you want to find the right people, you want to surround yourself with those right people, and they're all out there. To Mark's point, walk into any of those meetings, everyone is willing to help someone else. So with that, I want to thank you. We appreciate your leadership, your wisdom, and your insights so much. Thank you for sharing with our students in the community tonight. You're welcome. Thank you, Deb.